As promised, we're back. Thank you for staying tuned through the commercial break. And we just had a great conversation with Janelle about marketing, and we've talked about some mindset and value. And now we're going to jump into two of the pillars back to back over the closing out of this episode of the 7 principles of leadership. But first, I want to tell you what all of those 7 principles are, and then we'll talk at them one at a time. The first thing I want to let you do is that all of these 7 principles stand on a foundation. So if you want to think of them as pillars or columns, these principles stand on a foundation of servant leadership. The greatest leader in the history of the world was a servant before all other things. And so that's what all leadership is ultimately built on: service. You're serving to get the best resources, best efforts, best everything that you can to your clients, to your staff, to your people, to your constituents, to your third parties, to the family that you're supporting. You should be a servant first. So keep that context in mind as we discuss some of these 7 principles of leadership. So the first principle of the 7 is to be humble. So think about that in line with service. You should be humble, not banging your own drum or tooting your own horn to try to get the attention for an act of service that you might do. The next one is to be a passionate visionary. And the word passionate is on purpose because a lot of us are visionaries, but the passionate, that adjective has a key component in one of the ways that the principles play out. The next one is to set clear expectations and boundaries. Clear expectations and boundaries. And out of all the 7 principles of leadership, this one probably provides the most clarity than all of the other ones and really diffuses future friction. Okay. The next one is to give permissions. Giving permissions. Human beings often act or don't act in certain ways because they don't know what permissions they have. So that principle of leadership also jumps in to a lot of misconfusion, but also a lot of freedom for leaders and owners as well. Another one is to teach people how to find the answers. Teach them how to find the answers. Don't just give them the answers. Don't just expect them to do it all on their own, but teach them how to find the answers. The 5th principle is to create influence on your team. So if you want to be an influential leader by having these 7 principles, you also need to create influence on the teams and the people that you're leading. That's usually a very missed concept for a lot of people. Number 6 is, as a leader, you need to seek out and surround yourself with the right advisors. Surround yourself with the right advisors. And there's categories of advisors. And certainly you do not want them to be all yes men or yes women. You need a diversity. And the 7th principle of leadership is to roll up your sleeves and get in the trenches. Now, I obviously talk about a lot of getting out of operations and working on your business and not in your business, but rolling up your sleeves and getting in the trenches is still something that's super important, has to be done from time to time. So jumping back to the top here, I want us to go ahead and dive into be humble. And I'm going to lead us off with telling you a little story from my childhood. See, I grew up and I was a wrestler. I still like wrestling and I still do martial arts and grappling, and I'm a wrestling coach. And wrestling is just a form of who I am, a part of who I am. So when I was in high school, one of the big expectations, or I should say opportunities for high school wrestlers, was to then coach the younger leagues, the youth leagues and the middle school leagues. And what was fun about that is you now got your first dose of leadership, of being your own version of a coach. As a high school wrestler, we had a home tournament where teams from all over the area would come in for a youth event. And we were the umpires, the referees, the table workers. We were the support staff, all of the high school wrestlers. And then all of the parents and all the kids came in with their teams, and we had a tournament for the day. Well, the tournaments can run pretty long. They usually start at 9 in the morning, they maybe go to 4 or 5 o'clock at night. It is a commitment. And during that time, there's little breaks, and we had a break during one of our sessions so that the referees and everybody could go get some lunch. And what happened was very interesting is that people know each other from around the region. And one dad, who was a very powerful, big, puffed up guy, now that I have adult knowledge, I know that he weighed at least 260 to 280. He was a power lifter, big barrel chest, huge arms, just a very strong statured man. And he was very brazen. He ended up getting into conversations about wrestling and exhibitions, and hey, let's fill this downtime with some excitement. And hey, why don't we do some exhibitions? I'll wrestle somebody. Let's pick somebody to wrestle. It doesn't matter who it is. I'll wrestle anybody in the room. And you kind of get the feeling that he was doing the whole Goliath thing, challenging from the Philistine army to the Israelite army, saying, give me anybody, give me your best warrior. I'll fight them all. That's what this guy looked like, this big hulk of a man sitting here calling out to the crowd, give me somebody to wrestle. Well, the funny part is there's a man that became my head coach not but a year later, largely because of the demonstration that he committed in this, that he performed in this event. See, this guy had been coming around and he was nothing impressive to look at. You know, he had some fairly thick glasses and just a very standard haircut. And he wore very modest, normal clothes. And he actually had a little bit of a gangly gait about him. He would swing his arms a little heavy. He was very loose in his features. And if you looked at the man, you just would not see intimidation. You would not see power, speed, and athleticism. Now, he was not a pushover. You could tell he probably did some exercise, but comparing the two men side by side was quite the contrast. Well, he ends up standing up and say, "Hey, I don't mind. I'll wrestle the guy." There's a little bit of a snicker and a chuckle from the crowd because this was a mismatch. He might weigh 165, 170 pounds. There's probably a 100-pound discrepancy, and this guy looks like he should be painted green and called the Hulk. Okay, this is a big boy. Well, he says, "I don't mind. I don't mind. I'll wrestle him. Let's do the exhibition." And they're like, "Well, hey, man, you're wearing blue jeans and a plaid button up, and this guy's in his gym clothes. You can't wrestle like that." And he goes, "Oh, no problem. I've got my shoes and my gear in my truck. I'll be right back." Well, in my old profession in law enforcement, that's what we would call a clue. Clue number one is who drives around with their wrestling gear with them. And this guy was like a 30, 35-year-old man with a beard. Uh, so he comes back in, he changes lickety split, and they get out on the mat and they wrestle. Everybody's looking and waiting for this kind of gangly guy to get squashed, right? To get squeezed, twisted. And all of a sudden, the referee blows the whistle and they get after him. It didn't take but seconds for him to get a hold of this big guy, twist him, push him around, take him to the mat, flip him around, put him on his back, and pin him. When I say seconds, I mean this was maximum 20 seconds, 10, 15-second match where this guy was pinned and they bounce up off the mat, ref slaps the mat, pinned, everybody's shocked. The whole place just kind of sucks the air out of the room and goes quiet. Okay. So there's the interesting part. They jump up and the big guy goes, "Wait a minute, I wasn't ready. You blew the whistle before," and starts making excuses and saying that, "Oh, I only got beat because he caught me off guard, yada, yada, yada." Woof. Okay. Well, the challenger, the gangly guy who ends up being my head coach, says, "That's okay. We can do it again." Oh, okay. And so they shake hands. The referee says, "Are you ready? Are you ready?" Tweet, blows the whistle. And guess what happens again? Same exact scenario, except this time the challenger plays with him a little bit, rolls him around, scores a couple extra points, puts him in a couple extra positions. And after about 30 to 45 seconds of what looks like a cat playing with a mouse, he flips the guy over and pins him. Beep, blows the whistle, taps the mat. He was dominated. The guy puffs his chest, slaps hands instead of shaking hands, and storms off the mat. He had been embarrassed. And the victor gets his hand raised and just kind of, with his gangly gait, walks off the mat. And I'm sitting here wide eyed as a high school student saying, "What just happened? Who is that man? How did that situation occur?" Well, what happened is this challenger was very humble. See, he was a D1 collegiate wrestler from only 10 years ago. And he had been coaching wrestling teams throughout the country just as a assistant coach because he was passionate about it. His nickname in college, his wrestling nickname, was the Mad Dog. So this guy here was capable of great explosiveness, great skill at the highest level, and he really put this man in his place without ever tooting his own horn, without ever demonstrating anything other than the execution of high level skill. So what happened is we began talking to this, and the interest came to this guy, and he ended up becoming our head coach and led me to a very successful high school career to where I am now able to impart wrestling wisdom and knowledge to the athletes and the students that I train. What was so amazing was the humility. So I'm talking about humility. He wanted nothing but to show a demonstration and have a man stop being this bold champion, stop intimidating a crowd. He just said somebody needs to effectively quiet this bully up. So one of the things that I really want to emphasize and carry on about leadership here is that in leadership, we have to be humble. We might really have the highest level of skill, the highest level of intelligence, talents, or whatever we have in the room, but we can't just go around beating our chests and challenging everybody and saying, "Because I said so, I'm the boss," or "Because I said so, I'm the best, I'm the veteran, I'm the most talented." We have to encourage people. We have to mentor them. We have to lift them up, and we have to stay humble. If you're going to toot your own horn, you're going to get the same reaction that that big guy got. People are going to scoff at you. They're going to hope to watch you fall. But if you use your talents to support others as a servant, you can be humble and a servant. then you're really going to be able to elevate people. Your influence is going to skyrocket. The reason I have this in its first position, this be humble, is because it's something that I have struggled with very much historically in my life, and it shows up every once in a while. But many years ago in my law enforcement career, I had a criminal justice background, a full 4-year degree in criminal justice, which is not normal. Most people get an associate's degree, they get a bachelor's degree, very intelligent law enforcement in the country. But I just happened to have that step up. And I felt the need to really raise my hand, answer every question, make sure that people knew that I understood the law. And in my mindset, it was innocent because I just wanted to prove that I was a competent rookie and that you guys could trust me. But what didn't come across as competence, it came across as arrogance. And it took me a very long time. It took me years to earn that back. So just a couple of weeks or a couple of months of it effectively popping off and saying the right answer or correcting somebody in a scenario or this or that, which again, I wanted to protect people. I wanted to make sure the report got drawn up correctly, or I just want to make sure that accuracy was withheld or not withheld and presented. The tough part is it cost me a lot. It was a very heavy price. So I want to encourage everyone out there to be humble. If you're in an influence position at all, humility will actually amplify influence. And if you do that in an example as bold as the wrestling coach did, or as minuscule as just putting your nose down and getting the work done and doing it right and helping others achieve along the way, either way, your influence, your sphere of influence will grow and it will become more predominant, and people will look to you as their humble leader to take them on to that next adventure, that next challenge, that next area of growth. So I'm going to leave you with that thought as we pivot. And when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about that second category. We're going to dive into it as well. And over time, you're going to be able to see here on the show of Pivotal Change that all 7 principles of leadership will be covered. And then you can take those and implement them in your weak spot or grow your strong spots and make that pivotal change in your life to be a more influential leader. Stay tuned for a final segment, and you're going to enjoy the next topic that we have because it really is going to impact you.